All right, Masechet Eruvin. We're on daf 84. We're still discussing this Mishnah. Let's review the Mishnah. We saw last time a machloket between Rav and Shemuel. I'll remind everyone what that was about. Today we're going to see a couple of proofs for Shemuel, a couple of proofs for Rav, and we're going to leave it inconclusive. The topic is these areas that are in between two other areas. In this case, vertically. We saw other cases before, horizontally, two courtyards and a wall or a ditch in between. So the Mishnah here is talking about two people that share like an apartment building, and the upper floor did not make an eruv together with the lower floor. Maybe they made their own eruv, but not all together. And so then that caused a problem. So here we say, it goes by usage. For whom is it easier to access? If you have an item that's on top of a pole and the pole is 10 tefachim high, you have a plate of fruit over here, well then that's much easier to access from the people on the upper stories. We're going to talk about today, which one is it? I mean, the second story or the third story here? Which one is it talking about? So it's easier to access for them. It's more difficult to access from the people on the ground floor, and therefore this belongs to the people up above. However, if it's less than 10 tefachim or something on the floor, then that would go to the ground floor and not to the upper people. So that's the general rule, as whoever it goes to whomever it's more convenient to use. And so if you have an embankment around a cistern or a rock and it's 10 tefachim high, that goes to the upper floor. Less than that, it goes to the lower floor. Basically the same case. However, we only say it goes to the upper floor when it's right next to it, 4 tefachim close to the upper floor, as in this picture, like this, right? So this is right next to it. You can just reach out and get it. If it's farther away, then it doesn't help because it's still going to have to go all the way down and go across to receive it. So that's 4 tefachim. All right, that was the Mishnah. And then the Gemara brought up several different cases about, for example, going down and going up. If you can have one person going, let's see the pictures, for whom going down is easier. This was a case where it was equal, right? So if you have a case where this guy has to go up, but this guy is level, so then you go to the person that it's level. That's called petach. It's open for him, and the other guy has to throw it. So always it'll go to the person that's level. We ended with the case of this, where it's in between, and so this person has to throw it up, and this person would have to lower it down. What do you do in that case? This area, who does it belong to? And this was the subject of this machloket, Rav and Shemuel. Rav says they're both prohibited. In other words, he's considering going down and going up as equally inconvenient. That's Rav. Shemuel says it's easier to go down than to go up, right? It's easier to have gravity with you. You're going down, that's fine. Throwing it up is harder. And so therefore, according to Shemuel, it would belong to the person on top. That's the machloket that we're talking about. So we're going to see some various scenarios of going down and going up and equal, and try to decide in cases like this, does halacha follow Rav or Shemuel? And so the first set of cases is going to be talking about the Mishnah itself, our Mishnah, trying to prove from the language of the Mishnah which one is right. Okay, so here's Amar Rav, Shenem Asurin. Shemuel Amar, you give the one that goes down. All right, Tenan, here's our Mishnah. Anshe chased v'anshe mirpeset shachichu v'lo erbu. Kol shegavo asa tefachim lamirpeset. Pachot bikan lechaser. That's what we just read. Anything that's nearby and above 10 tefachim goes to the balcony. Anything below goes to the ground floor. Kasal kadatech ma mirpeset b'nei aliyah. Right now, we're assuming that when we say the balcony, we're talking about the upper floor, like the third story. Why are we calling them the people on the balcony? That's the language of the Mishnah. Well, because to get in and out, they got to go from the balcony. See, the third floor here, they have to go down to the balcony, and from there, they can come out. So right now, we were assuming that's talking about the people on the balcony, and they get access to this thing that's 10 tefachim high. But the question is, why? they have to go down, and the people on the ground floor have to go up. So this is a case of going down versus going up. And yet the Mishnah says what? That it belongs to the people that are up here. That follows the opinion of Shemuel and would be a challenge to the opinion of Rav. Rav says going down and going up is equal. And therefore, if they have equal access or equal inconvenience, they're both asur, they're both prohibited. So you see, look, the Mishnah proves that Shemuel is right. Going down and going up, going down is going down gets access to it. Alma calls lazeh b'shilshuv lazeh b'zirika. This fits a case of one going down and one going up. Notnin oto lazeh sheb'shilshuv. We give it to the one going down. That's the opinion of Shemuel. Well, we're not necessarily. Kedamar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said a statement about the next part of the Mishnah. We're going to see it in a minute, but we're applying that also to this part of the Mishnah. And his point is when the Mishnah says Bnei HaMirpeset, Anshe HaMirpeset, it's not talking about the people that live up here on the third floor, but rather the people that live right at this level, at the level of the balcony. And so for them, this is not going down. This is equal level, right? This is equal to them. They don't have to go up or down. They can just reach out. Remember, it's close by. They can just reach out and take the fruit that's on here. And so therefore, this is not a case of going down and going up, but rather someone who's equal, right? Just an opening, and the other one who's going up. And that's why it belongs to the people over here. Even the Rav would agree that equal and going up, you go to the person for whom it's level, for whom it's equal. And so therefore, this is not a proof for Shemuel. It's not a challenge to Rav. All right, so we solved that problem. Okay. Hold on. If you're now telling me that the Anshe Mirpeset is referring to the people on the balcony level, if both are on the chatzer, if this one is the balcony level, and you have something out here, let's say it's on the floor, now it's down here, then you said it belongs to the people in the chatzer. But why? If it's only the people that are in this thing that's relatively low down, so he goes out and gets it, and he can go out and get it. In other words, it's basically equal for both of them. Rashi says here, up here is very high. In other words, if you had just a little mound, let's say this was less than 10 tefachim, so then it would be a little bit higher than the people living on the ground floor and a little bit lower than the people living on the balcony. But it's basically equal, right? And yet the Mishnah says it belongs to the people on the ground. So if you're not talking about the third floor, but rather the balcony level, then it's difficult to figure out the second case in the Mishnah. Why should it belong to the people on the ground level? Amai. So our answer is, Mai lechaser, af lechaser, ushnehem asurin. I'll show you when the Mishnah, when it says, less than that, if you have something in the courtyard that's that's less on a thing, something that's less than 10 tefachim, it belongs to the people in the chaser. This doesn't mean it belongs to the people in the chaser and not to the people on the balcony, but rather also to the people of the chaser. They have equal access to it, and therefore it's prohibited to both. This line means prohibited to both, not that the chaser could get it. That's how Rav would have to explain that line. All right, and hachinami mistabera, and a further proof that this has to be the case. Midiketani sefa. Right, the next case told us that the item, whatever the pillar has to, or the mound has to be close to the balcony, but if it's far out into the courtyard, then even if it's higher, it belongs to the people of the chatzer. If it's out here, something out here, why? It should be equally accessible to both. In other words, both of them have to come down and walk to the chaser, come down or come out. And so neither of them can reach it just by going out. They're both going to go to the ground floor and then access it. Nobody's dropping something down or throwing something up. So therefore, it should be equal. And so according to this now definition of it belongs to the chatzer, and that means both of them are asur, it makes sense. אלא מאי לחצר אף לחצר ושניהם אסורים, הכי נמה מאי לחצר אף לחצר ושניהם אסורים שמאמינה. And so too in the current case, where you have something that's on a small mound, then it belongs to both the people on the balcony level and the people on the ground floor equally, and both are prohibited. All right, so there we've resolved that challenge, and now we're going to try another one. תנן, חוליית הבור וסלע שהן גבוהין 10 למרפסת, פחות מכאן לחסר. This is the next part of our same Mishnah. If we have an embankment around a cistern or a rock, and it's higher than 10 tefachim or higher, then that belongs to the people on the balcony. Less than that, to the chatzer. Rav Huna said, lo tan hadarim ba mirpeset. And so when we say balcony, this is referring to the people that are on the balcony level. All right. Tenach sela bor ma'ika lememar. So now okay, fine. We understand that how this would apply to a rock, but the problem with the cistern is that it goes down. Here's the picture for the cistern. So in this case, if I'm up here and I want to access the cistern, I'm going to take a bucket and I'm going to lower the bucket all the way down, right? I mean, it's true that the walls are higher and the walls are equal access, but I'm not talking about, putting fruit on the top of this embankment. I'm talking about lowering something all the way down. And so therefore, in this case, it should be that the people on top have to go all the way down. And the people down here, they also would have to throw their bucket over and go down. So this should be equally accessible to both the people on the balcony and the people on the ground floor. Then why does the Mishnah say that it belongs to the people up here? So that is a problem and a challenge to Shemuel, who says that it belongs to the people up here. Okay, so Tenach Sela, I understand if it's a rock, then that's no problem. But what about this? This would seem to be a problem. So Amar Rav Yitzchak bered Rav Yehuda, hacha bebor melea mayim askinan. Oh, so it could be talking about not just a cistern like this, but one that's full of water. Okay, how's this better? If it's full of water, then you see that for these people, that it's equal, it's level, right? He just has to reach out, put the bucket there, and bring it back in. And for these people down here, they have to throw it up and then get it and come back down. So it's much easier for the balcony people than for the lower people. And so the Mishnah would make sense when the cistern is full of water. All right, the next question is going to be, but once I start taking water out, what's going to happen? It's going to get lower, under 10 tefachim, and then it's not going to be good anymore. Right? Aren't you? It's losing water. No. No, once it's full, and it started Shabbat being full, so therefore it belongs to the people on the balcony. Then, even though it becomes less on Shabbat, it starts on Shabbat and is permitted, then we continue with that, even though it becomes less than 10. All right, you could say that, or you could say, Adraba, kevan dechi chasra asira, kimal yanami asira. Or you could say, since when it does get lower, it's going to be prohibited. So even right now, it's prohibited. In other words, water is made to be lowered, and you're going to take it out. So therefore, maybe even the beginning of Shabbat, even when it's full, it should not be permitted. Water is a kind of thing that is not stable. And so therefore it's not really, you're really going to expect to take the bucket and go down with it. Oh, maybe we're talking about something that's full of fruit, a cistern that's full of fruit. So fruit is something solid, and something solid is more reliable that it's going to be there. Well, even that, you're going to take fruit and start eating it on Shabbat, and then the level is going to get lower and lower. Oh, bitibla, we're talking about tebel. It's fruit that we didn't take maaser, so therefore it's not allowed. It's not kosher. You can't eat it on Shabbat, and you're not allowed to take maaser on Shabbat, and therefore could be talking about a case where the cistern is full of fruit that's not kosher, and that's why it's basically the same as a rock. I don't have a picture of fruit that's not kosher here, right? So therefore, it's basically the same as a rock. If this was all filled in, then you understand, right? This is on equal level to the balcony. It's more accessible to the balcony than to the people down here, and that would explain the Mishnah, both according to Shmuel and according to Rav. And so that's a solution to that. And in fact, don't think we just made up this whole thing. It actually makes sense because it compares this case of a cistern to the case of a rock. So it should be a cistern that's like a rock. How could a cistern be like a rock if it's filled up with something that you're not allowed to use? All right, if it's really so similar, then why mention both? Just say one of the cases. Just say rock. Oh, I need it because I might think that you should make a gezerah. Even when I fill it with fruit that is not accessible, it's not kosher, I might think that's still prohibited for the people on the balcony to use it, because one day I might fill it up with fruit that is edible, that I did take maaser. And in that case, it would be a problem because you tend to eat the fruit and it gets lower. So that's why I need to talk about that case as well, to teach me that I do not make such a gezerah. And therefore, in such a case, it's like a rock. I need the rock case of rock also to tell me that this case is similar to the one that is with a rock. Okay, so we've answered that question, and now we're going to have another question for Rav against Shemuel. Tashema. Anshe Chased v'anshe Aliyah sheshachechu velo erbu. This is a braita with a similar case to the Mishnah. The people in the courtyard did not make an eruv together with the people on the upper stories. אנשי חסר משתמשים בעשרה תחתונים, ואנשי עלייה משתמשים בעשרה העליונים. כיצד? זיז יוצא מן הכותל, למטה מעשרה לחסר, למעלה מעשרה לעלייה. So the case looks like this, where you have shelves that are sticking out of a wall, and so you have a first floor and a second floor, and assume the second floor is 20 tefachim higher than the ground floor. So if you have a shelf that's down below, well, the shelf down below is obviously easier to use to the people that live on the first floor than the people up here. They would have to lower things down, and so the lower shelf belongs to the people that live in the courtyard. Whereas the upper shelf, the one that's above 10 tefachim, these people have to throw things up there. That's more difficult for them to use. But the people on the second floor, they could just open the window and place things there on, just about level. So obviously, the upper shelf will belong to the upper people. Okay, the question now we're going to insert is, what about if it's as exactly 10? If it's exactly 10, then that fits into the case that's a machloket between Rav and Shemuel. And the people below have to throw it up. The people above have to throw it down. According to Rav, both would be prohibited because he considers them to be equally inaccessible. According to Shemuel, going down is easier than going up. So Shemuel would say that this middle shelf is permitted. Okay, so let's see, what does this braita say? The braita does not actually address the middle case, but we infer, ha de bene asur, since it tells me two cases. The upper shelf belongs to the upper people. The lower shelf belongs to the lower people. And so that means the middle shelf belongs to nobody. Nobody is allowed to use the middle shelf. That fits the opinion of Rav, and it goes against the opinion of Shemuel. So now we have a proof for Rav. What is Shemuel going to do with this? Don't worry, Rav Nachman will come save the day. Amar Rav Nachman, hacha bekotel tisha asad askinan, beziz yosemi menu. The case we're talking about here was something that was only 19 big. I don't have a picture. Right, so imagine this is one lower, so there is no middle that's at 10, right? If it's 9, if the second story is a total of 9, then either it goes, the middle will be 9.5. 9.5 is still under 10, and so there's no problem. And if it's above 10, then it already belongs to the upper guy. So there's nothing that would be exactly 10 from here and 10 from here, right? It would always be either within 10 of the lower guy, and which is considered equal to the lower, or within 10 of the upper story, which is considered level with the upper story. And that's why this Baraita did not mention the middle case, not because the middle case is prohibited, but because there is no case where it's exactly 10 more above and 10 below the bottom and up, the lower and upper stories. All right, so that's how Shemuel could get out of this problem. למטה מעשרה לזה בפתח ולזה בשלשול, למעלה מעשרה לזה בפתח ולזה בשלשול. If it's within 10 of the floor, then it will be equal to the floor. It's a petach, it's just an opening for the floor, and the upper story has to bring it down, so obviously it goes to the lower story. If it's within 10 of the upper story, then it's more than 9 of the lower story. So then it's easier. And for the upper story, it's a petach, it's just open level, and the other lower story we have to throw it up. And everyone agrees in these cases that they're unequal, and so there's no dispute, and there's no dispute there. Okay, now we get to another case to try to challenge these opinions. Tashema. שתי גזוז תראות זו למעלה מזו, אסור לעליונה ולא אסור לתחתונה, שתיהן אסורות עד שיערבו. Okay, so we have two balconies that each one is above the other, but not exactly at the same, not exactly. And they made a chute in the upper one, but not in the lower one, in order to draw water. Both of them are asurot until they make an eruv. Picture is helpful here. So here are the two gizuz teraot, and the halacha is if you live up here and you want to draw water, there's a problem because you're inside the shut harabim, and the water is the shut harabim or karmelit, and so you can't draw inside and bring it in. But one thing that you can do, and this is a special leniency regarding water, is you can make a chute that's that's 4 tefachim by 10 tefachim, and then that basically we consider it as if it goes all the way down and encloses that section of water. And that way you can take this bucket and lower it down. Now, we only made, in this case scenario, they only made a chute in the higher one. So the people that live up here, they just go out their door and they lower it down and they can get water. But the people over here, see what they have to do. If they want to use this chute, they have to throw it up here and then lower it down. Oh, so you see that, so they have to go up and go down, and so that makes it more difficult for them. However, the halacha is, right, shetehen asurot. They are both prohibited. Well, that's interesting. Why should they both be both prohibited? This one only goes down, and this one has to go up. So, according to Shemuel, right, the person over here, they should be okay. So this is a challenge to Shemuel. According to Rav, we understand why they're both prohibited. Going up and going down, he considers to be equal, and therefore, according to Rav, they're equally accessible. According to Shemuel, this is more accessible. So this is a challenge to Shemuel. That's the case. Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava bebain bene tachtona derech elyona lemalot. Oh, this was not a case like this where he has to throw it, but rather like this, where there's a little ladder in between. And the people that live on the lower one, they climb the ladder and bring their buckets here, and then they lower it down. So they're not actually throwing it up. They're both using it in the same way. They're both lowering it down. And that's why it's equal. It's lowering versus lowering. And Shemuel, in that case, also would say that since they're equal, they prohibit each other. You see how fancy?
Like a New York apartment building with those escape ladders.
Yeah, this looks like the fire escapes, right? Very good. And sometimes they use them, right? They put stuff out there. Who does that actually belong to? You see how fancy these pictures are. You see the reflection of the ladder in the water, and this one, see, no reflection, right? Okay, it's very good, very realistic. Okay, so that is one possible answer to solve that. We're going to see another possible answer by Abaye. He's going to have introduce a new principle that says if these are less than 10 tefachim with each other, then less than two areas that are less than 10 tefachim apart are considered all one area. All right, that's his chidush. And so it's not really higher and lower. It's like all one, and therefore they just all have the same law. So here's Abaye responding to the same question. Kegon de kaimin betoch asara de hadade. Velami baya ka'amar. Lami baya asula tachtona. Velo asule alyona de asire. De kevan de bego asara de hadade kaiminan asara nahadade. Ela afilu asula alyona velo asula tachtona. Sakada tech amina. Kevan de laze benachat velaze bekashe. לתווה לזה שתשמישו בנחת, כמשמלן, כיוון דבגו עשרה קיימינן, עשרן ההדדה. So he says, for example, when the two balconies are within 10 tefachim of each other, and so they fuse into one, and they get the same law. Now, so why does it have to say in such a case that one is that the chute is in the higher one? It wouldn't really matter where the chute was because they're all next to each other. So he's saying, you're right. And the same law would apply to both. Not if the chute was on the lower one and not on the other one, then for sure it would be a problem because they render each other prohibited. They're both going down equally. But even if it's only in the higher one and not in the lower one, I might have thought, since it's easier for the people on the upper one, they just go down, and it's harder for the people on the lower one because they got to go up and then go down. They got to throw it over. Let it be on the upper one. That's why it talks about this case, that since it's within 10, then they all become prohibited. Here, we could just read this note here. Abai introduces an additional consideration. The status of a cistern between two domains situated within 10 handbreadths of one another is not determined by the difficult or ease of their use. Rather, the two domains are treated as one, even if one of them can access the water of the cistern only with great difficulty. For instance, even if the lower of the two balconies requires both lowering and throwing, they are considered a single domain in this regard due to their proximity. So they are considered a single domain, but they still prohibit each other. So in that sense, they're not truly one, but they do prohibit each other. Okay, because they're so close to each other. All right, so now we're going to have a last case, and we're going to compare Abayez. We're going to apply Abayez to this case too. Ki hada amar Rav Nachman amar Shemuel gag hasamuch l'rshut harabim sarich sulam kavua lehatiro. Sulam kavua in, sulam arai la. This case is a little bit complicated. Let's try to figure it out. What we have here is a bunch of things. We have a reshut harabim, and then there's also this reshut harabim has access to a roof. It's a kind of low roof. In this case, they make it like as if it's on a hill. Okay. Anyway, there's 10 tefachim here, and so there are people that they can put things on the roof. So that's one. Now the roof is also open to a balcony over here, and the balcony is within 10 tefachim of the roof, and also within 10 tefachim of the reshut harabim. So applying everything that we said until now, let's consider it as if this is one courtyard and this is one courtyard and this is the area in between, right? Kind of like that. And our question is, this area in between, who does it belong to? These people or these people? Okay. I guess you would say it's closer to the midpeset, right? So the midpeset is within 10. This is lower than 10. Okay, but that's our question. Which one is it? Now, this statement says that it depends on whether there's a ladder here. All right, this seems counterintuitive. Why would the ladder going up to a higher story affect whether the roof belongs to the domain of reshut harabim or the domain of the midpeset? Well, the answer is that if it's a sulam kavua, if there's a permanent staircase here, then we assume that the roof goes together with the people that live here and separates it from reshut harabim. And because of the presence of the staircase, the people up here can use it, and the people in the balcony can also use the rooftop, and it's separated from the Reshut Harabim. Okay, that's all the Talmud said. That's all that source said. Now the Gemara is inferring that means only if there is a permanent staircase. If there's no permanent staircase, then we would be a problem, and the people on the balcony would not be able to use the roof because there's equal access from the balcony and the area here. Well, why do you say there's equal access? Isn't this 10 tefachim and this is less than 10 tefachim? Don't these people have to throw it up? And these people don't have to throw it up. So why do you say there's equal access? Our answer is going to be the application of Abaye's principle that they are within 10 tefachim of each other. In other words, these two, the balcony and the Reshut Harabim, are within 10 tefachim of each other. And so just like those two levels of balconies kind of become one, and we don't differentiate their laws, so too these become one and don't differentiate, and therefore they have considered equal access to the roof. Let's see that inside. Since the balcony and the street are within 10 tefachim of each other, therefore they prohibit each other's use. They're considered equal use to the roof, and therefore both prohibited. And there you go. That's an application of Abaye. All right. Is it necessarily so? Maybe not. Matkif la Rav Papa. Remember, because all that was a question on Shemuel. And so now if it is in fact like that, then it's going to be a question on Rav. Okay, so Matkif la Rav Papa. V'dilma keshrabim mechatefin alav bechumta vesudra. Says, no, not necessarily. That's not the reason, but rather as follows. What if it's a case where the passers-by tend to use this roof to put their hats on or their handkerchiefs on? So in other words, you're right. Even though in general 10 tefachim is something that's inconvenient to use because you have to throw things up there. If you're carrying a big load, then you want it to be a little lower. 10 tefachim is like 32 inches. You have to lift it up to put it onto to rest your load onto that wall. So it's inconvenient for use. But if it's a case where the people passing by in the street just want to rest their hats, it's a hot day and they want to put their hat there for a while, so then that's easy access. And so since it's a case like that, or could be a case like that, that's the reason why we need the ladder there. If there's a permanent ladder, that makes it clear that this is permanently connected to the people living here and therefore connected more to the balcony. But without the ladder, then I would have to assume it's equal access both to the balcony and to the street, because the street people put their hats on it, and not because of the Abayez 10 tefach rule. All right, so we had many attempted proofs for Shemuel and then for Rav, and none of them are conclusive. But on the way, we got to visit some complex combination cases of different balconies and roofs. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.